I know that you took a picture with Eddie Dice.
Oh, yeah.
Remember Eddie? Do you know Eddie?
Wow.
Me and you and Eddie. I don't. We was at the maybe the Wednesday dinner or something like that. And me and him got her. I got it somewhere.
Thank you. I've been around a while.
You have been. It's now you're no relation to the butter, right?
No, I wish. So no relation to the butter or to the booze. Fleischmann gin, Fleischmann margarine, but no.
Let me ask you this though. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that you are a distant relative to Harry Houdini.
That is correct. Grandfather's first cousin.
Your grandfather's first cousin was
right.
Harry Houdini.
Right. His real name was Eric Weiss, and his sister, Houdini, died in around 19, I'm going to get this wrong, but probably 1925, 26, somewhere in there. But he had a younger sister by the name of Gladys Weiss, and Gladys Weiss was a mainstay at my grandparents' house for years. So, yeah.
That was his, now what, his sister?
That was Houdini's baby sister, yes.
Boy, it's a small world, isn't it?
Yep.
Isn't it funny they say you're 6 people away from, what's that, the 6 degrees of separation, you're 6 people away from
somebody you know.
From everybody in the world.
Yes, indeed.
Now, you're one of the, was there United, 435 state representatives.
Federal, yes. And from all across the United States, some states get one, like North Dakota and South Dakota, Alaska. They only get one representative. And remember, every state under the Constitution, whether it's Rhode Island, Little Rhode Island, or Big Texas, they get 2. But the House is based on population. So every 10 years, it changes. Tennessee has 9. And we had 9 10 years ago. We had 9 10 years before that. So we didn't grow a seat or reduce a seat. Some states have grown and some have reduced.
Who determines that?
The census. They do a census every 10 years under the Constitution. States like Texas continue to grow. Florida continue to grow. New York lost at least 1. Michigan lost 1. The Northeast and Midwestern states continue to lose population to the South. Even California lost 1 this time.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Because people moving out, or
Yes,
just?
sir. Yep.
That's significant.
That's significant. But Texas has picked up more. Time before this, Texas got 4. They just got 2. So they'll be the second largest delegation. Florida picked up some. It's interesting. Now, Alabama just came close to losing 1. They did not. They stayed with their delegation size.
Yeah.
Tennessee came this close to picking up 1. We're about 600,000 short. We'll get 1 next time.
And we want 1, I guess, because we got more votes.
Exactly. That's in the House. It's about population. Tennessee has 9. Some states have 1, but the bigger states, they have a lot. So the Senate is the equalizer. They all have 2.
Does it seem like when you're standing in those big groups that Tennessee is the redheaded stepchild, or do you feel like we're represented as in other words, do you feel like that your state is respected, or I guess?
Very much so. And that credit goes to our state leaders and our local leaders, and not to our members of Congress. We represent the state at the federal level, but think about that. Tennessee is probably the most fiscally responsible state. By state constitution, our legislators have to balance the budget every year. They don't have a choice. They may have the best causes of the world, but they have to spend their money wisely. That's not the way it is in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. deficit spends every year, and that goes on the national debt, and that's not good. But Tennessee is one of the best states for low taxes, pro-business. It's a right-to-work state. It's a state that people around the country, because of its debt-free status, we are really the envy of the nation. And I'll tell you something else we do very well in Tennessee, our voting. Tennessee was chosen as probably one of, if not the best states for voter security and voter accuracy. And that's very important. 1 person, 1 vote, counted 1 time.
That is almost a controversial issue right now, isn't it?
Very much so. People call me all the time, and they've got real concerns at the federal level and in some states about the sanctity of our voting system. And that should be something, whether you're a Republican like me, or an independent, or a Democrat, or even a nonpartisan, we should all want honest, open, fair elections. As I've said, one legal voter casting one vote counted one time.
And if they all want to wear red shirts and they all vote for it, I'll put on a red shirt. I just want to know that everybody's voted.
Yeah. Indeed. Well, I want people to vote who can vote. I want to make sure that nobody is suppressed, that if they've got a legal right to vote, that they get a chance to vote. Absolutely.
Even if it's absentee, that should be
absentee or early vote.
Early voting, military.
Yep. Some states don't have early vote. Tennessee has for a long period of time, but other states chose not to do it. That's another great thing about our Constitution. It gives the states a lot of authority over its own voting.
That's something we forget, that we're the United States and that each state can regulate itself.
Yep.
And is there power in that, or are we better off to not be individual states? And I guess I could argue that point depending on the issue.
Well, I think our founding fathers fixed that for us a long time ago. Thank goodness. If you look at when we were under the Articles of Confederation, that was the governing document after the Revolutionary War, the War of Independence, if you choose. And there were a lot of the founding fathers who were very skeptical of a constitution because they feared a big federal government taking over states' rights. Now, at that time, there weren't a lot of states, right? We had the original 13 colonies and became 13 states, and of course the country was growing. Now we've got 50. But that's why there was such a big debate over the Constitution. Many of our founding fathers really said, yes, we want one. Others said, oh my gosh, we need to protect states' rights. That's why they put the 10th Amendment to the Constitution there, basically saying what the federal government doesn't do, that power is reserved for the states. So we've got to respect that. That's why when people ask me, is something constitutional, I always stop them and I said, well, I'm going to answer that question two ways. And they look at me. I said, well, under the federal Constitution, okay, is it constitutional? But whether you're in the great state of Tennessee or Wisconsin or Pennsylvania or Florida, every state has its own constitution. So you've got to answer that question both ways.
And not many people realize that.
Yes, you're right. Absolutely. They just think it's the federal constitution. Yeah. But every state, including Tennessee, has its own great constitution.
That it's almost like if you had a piece of property, you may have to be under the county zoning, the city zoning, the homeowners association,
yeah,
and even go as far as saying under my house's, my family's rules. So the United States is sort of the county. I go by these rules.
Local government.
So the local government and the states can define that more accurate,
right,
but not to the extent of changing the federal law.
Exactly.
I guess.
Under the Supremacy Clause of the United States Constitution, they can't, local and state cannot do something that is violative or would violate the federal Constitution. Interestingly enough, though, under the state constitutions, more freedoms can be given under the state constitutions than under the federal Constitution. So a state can actually go beyond and give more rights, but can't take rights away.
So they can add.
Yes.
But they can't take away.
Sure. Let me give you a prime example. Under the Fourth Amendment, searches and seizures. Remember, I'm a lawyer by profession before I was a congressman. Still keep that Tennessee law degree. There were a lot of search and seizure cases around the country that the United States Supreme Court, under the federal Constitution, said this is a perfectly legal search and seizure and would uphold the arrest. A number of states took measures, whether right or wrong, to basically say, well, that may be okay under the federal Constitution, but they were going to give their citizens more protections and hold those searches and seizures in violation of the state constitution and therefore not allow those.
Where'd you learn all this?
I picked it up over the years. God bless me with a good memory. So,
Is that what it is,
yeah,
memory?
Yeah, you read it, you learn it, and thank God I keep it.
You retain good?
I retain well. It's a blessing. It's my gift.
Have you always been that way?
Yes.
You see it, do you associate it when you...
I learn it, I keep it, it goes in my head. It's just like meeting people and learning history and writing. As good as I'm at that, my frailty is on the mathematics side. That's where my
Math
frailty
is your weak point?
is my weak point. Yep.
Decimals?
Anything.
Like,
Okay.
how about on the...
I figure tip's good because I always tip real well. I love our service in restaurants, especially right here in Bradley County, Tennessee. So I always give good tips.
I always get confused on multiplying fractions because you have to flip one
Can't
over.
do it.
That's all
Can't
crazy
do
to me.
it. Yeah, that's right.
I can remember them doing it, but I can't remember why.
I understand.
Now, you went to Knoxville, right?
I went to University of Tennessee, College of Law, Knoxville from 1983 to 1986. I was 20 years old when I started. They gave me a chance. I was just on Rocky Top yesterday. Just went up there and
For the ball game?
Yep, saw the old law school. It was really some good memories. Long time ago, but they took a chance on me. I was 20 years old.
Now, we're about the same age.
Okay,
I'm 56.
I'm a lot older than you.
Not much.
Well, I'll be 60 in October.
That's not much.
Yeah, you look younger.
So, now in 1983, I was a senior in high school, and you were doing what?
1983, I was starting law school at the University of Tennessee College of Law.
Where'd you go to high school?
I had 2 high schools. If this is what was sad. I had 3 elementary schools, 3 middle schools, and 2 high schools all across the country. So I actually had 2 high schools. Went to University of Illinois, was very poor, worked 2 jobs, and I got my undergraduate degree in political science and history in 3 years instead of 4.
Did you work in high school?
Yes.
What'd you do?
I did a couple of things. I worked for an art firm. I love the arts. There was a company, and I'm going to really date myself now. Do you remember when they used to have posters that they would frame and put on the wall in businesses?
Do I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Late 70s, early 80s.
That was a big deal, wasn't
It's
it?
a big deal. I worked for an art firm that if a museum was going to have a show, perhaps a Degas show or a Monet show or an exhibit, a King Tut museum, I remember that, they would do a poster to commemorate that. Well, this firm I worked for basically would buy those posters up and then sell them to framing shops all over and print shops all over the country. And then a corporation, a business, or a person could put that. And if you ever go into an old retro office, you'll actually see some of these. It'll be like from...
They forgot they were there.
They forgot they left them on the wall. But that's how I gained a great appreciation, a further appreciation for the arts. So that was one of my first jobs. What else I did? I scrubbed floors in high school for $2.10 an hour at the Woodfield Mall.
Buffer?
Did a little of that, more with the mop. And at that time, I was 110 pounds. I couldn't carry that dirty mop water around. It'll be all slushing all over.
And those were heavy mops.
Those were heavy.
Heavy.
And I was 110 pounds then, but I'd scrub those, sweep the floors, scrub the floors, was just happy to get the $2.10 an hour then.
What was your, do you work there after school?
After school and on weekends, sure did. Worked 2 jobs during college. Fascinating. In the archives and in the newspaper libraries. I like to read. Of course, when I read, I remember, right? Mm-hmm. So I would actually read newspapers from all over the country, the big ones and then the local ones, which was great. And then I'd go and I'd work in the archives. And the archives is where the universities keep their old yearbooks, their old papers of professors. And it's great just to get down there in the archives. It was dark and a little dingy, a little musty for that matter, but you'd get in there and just to read the things. Now, bear in mind, I was at U of I from 80 to 83, at UT from 83 to 86. So in that era, 1980, it's when Ronald Reagan was elected president. Met him in 82, but I actually would do that work then. So 1980, we were getting papers, probably some in still from the teens and the early 20s, from alumnus who had either passed away or wanted to donate their collection. Yeah.
Boy, that's something.
Yeah.
Isn't it funny that back then people always had a job on evenings or weekends? I bagged groceries. I worked on construction sites, and it wasn't do you work, it was where you worked.
That's right. And I was thankful to have a job and make that money. And my dad was really poor. He was widowed. We were widowed. My mom died in
As you're
77.
are you a fellow Paisan?
I am half a Paisan. That's indeed. Mom was a full-blooded Genoese, Northern Italian. We lost her early. She got cancer when I was 9, breast cancer. We thought she was cured. It came back when I was 11, and she passed just as I turned age 13. I was an only child. Yeah, it was tough. And I got mom's religion and dad's politics. So
What was her religion?
Roman Catholic.
Is that different than Catholic, or is that the same?
It kind of is. If you were to ask any of our friends in the Church of England or Episcopal friends, they would say they're Catholics, but they're just not Roman Catholics. They're English Catholics, I guess. Or and then of course some of the other churches that are out there. The Poles have a wonderful Polish Catholic Church as well. But that was a big part of that. And Dad came from a wonderful mixed background. Mom grew up in the Bronx. Dad grew up in Queens. So they were good parents. I was an only child. They had me late. So she was born in 22. I was born in 62. And they were the babies of their family. So I grew up all with people who were born very early in the last century. And I was exposed to those wonderful Depression era values of thrift, of respect. It was very good for me growing up to get
More of a reverence.
Yes, great, and understanding you don't spend what you don't have, and you eat what's on your plate, all those things. But that's the good news. The sad news is being the baby that I was in the family with such older people, they all passed away very early in my life from natural causes. Some earlier than others, but I was literally left without much family, of course, until I met my lovely wife and had my 3 sons, and God's been good.
What was it like growing up in New York?
Well, I grew up in New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia, and Chicago. New York was interesting. Lived on Long Island, lived in Hastings-on-Hudson.
Remember on that Seinfeld commercial our Seinfeld episode when George's mother said, "Don't talk to them. They're from Long Island."
Yes, yes.
That was really the thinking, wasn't it?
It is, and of course, as you know, I know Donald Trump very well. Donald Trump is from Queens. Queens is one of the 5 boroughs
How
of
well
New
do
York.
you know Donald Trump?
Very well. Spent a lot of time with President Trump. I like President Trump a lot. Saw him down at Mar-a-Lago a few months back when he endorsed me again.
I saw him at Mar-a-Lago. I was at Mar-a-Lago.
Did you visit?
I went down there with Alan Jones.
Oh, Alan's great.
He walked right past me,
Okay.
Donald Trump, probably from me to you, but he was looking that way, so I didn't talk to him.
Well, I've had dinner with him several times. Been with him on
At
Air Force
Mar-a-Lago?
One. No, once at Mar-a-Lago, but Air Force One on the airplane.
He sits in a thing with those queue lines, they got ropes around his table.
Well, it depends on the venue. I have in my den, and it's beautiful, it's cherished. He was having dinner with a group of Republicans in Maryland. We're up in Baltimore, and he had his placard over there that said, "The President." It was a white piece of paper and just said, "The President." So after the dinner, I had gotten up and said some very laudatory, praiseworthy things about him. Of course, he was smiling. And afterwards, I went up and I said, "Mr. President, would you mind signing this for me?" And he got his beautiful gold pen out and he signed it. And he's very meticulous in the way that he signs things. He takes great pride.
He actually
in
goes
the
in
signature.
an upward stroke, doesn't he?
He does. And he gave that to me. But yeah, have a good relationship with him. But he's from Queens. Queens is one of the 5 boroughs of New York City. But as you go, Brooklyn and Queens is actually part of the fish. If Long Island looks like a fish,
Yeah.
right? But Nassau and Suffolk County, which is further out on the island, are not part of the city, but that's what they typically refer to as Long Island.
Now, Greenwich Village, what would that be classified as?
Greenwich Village would be downtown in Manhattan, just like all the other Mulberry Street, Little Italy.
Right in down, yeah.
Yes, in Manhattan, which we would call Gotham County, or what people would call New York City.
Did you ever go to Little Italy much?
All the time. And it's interesting. There's really 2 Little Italys. There's one down in Mulberry Street. You got Little downtown Manhattan, right next to Chinatown. It's beautiful.
That's where I've been.
Okay, let me tell you about another Little Italy,
Yep.
where my mother's family was. It's on Arthur Avenue in the Bronx. It's called, the area is called Fordham. It's where Fordham University is. And Nonno, the Italian grandfather, when he came over, he was a baker. And the bakery is still there on the corner where he baked Italian bread. But when I was a kid, you'd go down there, and literally they would have rabbits and sausages and everything hanging in the windows. But yeah, Arthur Avenue in the Bronx.
I ate at one of those places, and they brought out, I don't know what it was, but it just about made, it was so good. It was like a green, yellow, and red peppers sliced thin in olive oil with pepper and salt, and that was all it was. And it just made my eyes water nearly.
It's good stuff. You get that Italian sausage. I like the sweet, some like the hot. They're both good, but you make the sausage and you get the peppers.
Yeah.
And I like the green and the red, and then you get some potatoes in there. But you have to have the good olive oil.
Yeah, and the potatoes there's not too many of them.
No.
But the good olive oil is good, isn't it?
That is great.
Do you eat a lot of pasta?
I do. And Nonna and my mother used to make homemade pasta and homemade ravioli. And they would lay it out, and they would make that, and they'd work on that all day. And also gnocchi. See, remember, there were Northern Italians, which is an extreme minority, okay? Most of the Italians, over 95% of the Italians who came to the United States came from Southern Italy.
The lower boot.
That's right, from further south from Rome. That's exactly right. But from Rome up, there was only about 5 to 10% who were Northern Italians. They were Genoese. They spoke a dialect. My mother spoke real Italian, but she also spoke a dialect. If she were sitting with somebody from Calabria or Napoli or Sicily, many times with their dialect, they couldn't understand each other. So that's why when Italy reunited, they wanted to have one language. That's why they have now a common language, which would call the real Italian. But she spoke that. But at home, it was come va, okay? Not como sta, come va. So that's all they spoke at home. But did they do good cooking.
Can you speak much Italian?
Very little, very little. I speak more Spanish than Italian.
Yeah.
Solamente un poquito, pero bien.
Rifermente Juno Kazuno?
¿Qué pasa? I enjoy my Spanish. I really do. All comes from Latin. I regret the fact that I didn't learn more Italian. But Spanish is beautiful.
You know, it makes us wonder if we'll all just be one language over time.
Well, I still think English, pretty much, and some people would argue with me, is probably the universal language. Anywhere you go in the world, it's a universal language of business. There's no question about that. I meet with world leaders really all over the world, in the United States and in their countries. Most of them have mastered English very well. There's a few exceptions. Interesting, probably still the international language of diplomacy is still French.
Is that right?
And I don't speak French.
I wouldn't have thought that. Let me tell you about Capstar Bank. They're located in Nashville, Hendersonville, Gallatin, Athens, Madisonville, Sweetwater, Etowah, and in Cleveland at 950 25th Street and 3855 North Ocoee Street. I've used them. I like them. Give them a try. They're no problem. Now,
Coup d'etat.
436 of you.
435.
435.
435 voting, and there are some others from the territories, Puerto Rico, District of Columbia. They're members, but they can't vote. Okay, they can't vote on the floor.
You know, having you here is a really big deal for me.
That's a big deal for me.
Not
I
as
know
much-
all the people that you reached. So
Well, think about it. 435, a guy that can talk to the president. That's really a big deal.
well, it's a privilege. It's what I wanted to do my whole life, and I never thought I'd get a chance. I came to Tennessee in '86, opened up the law firm
Where'd you meet your wife first?
at law school. My wife is from Hickson, a beautiful part of Chattanooga.
What part of Hickson?
Forest Plaza area. She went to Hickson High School.
Cassandra Smith Road, that area?
A little bit further, closer to the city. Well, it's all in the city now, Hickson
Yeah.
is, but closer to downtown.
Yeah.
I met her in law school. Her daddy was a very famous lawyer in Chattanooga.
What was you doing when you met her?
I met her in the law school basement, literally at a vending machine, and I was trying to get something out of the vending machine.
What were you trying to get?
Probably a candy bar or a cup of coffee.
You don't remember what it was?
Not then, and I remember just talking with her very nicely. And I'm a big UT fan. I love my Vols. And we started talking about Tennessee football, and then nothing happened after that. But I had a really good buddy who kind of carried me through law school. I was 20 when I started. He was 26, almost 27. And I thought he was an old man.
Yeah.
He'd been in the military, and he really just looked out for me. Called him Captain Jim, and he used to sit next to me in class because he would help me a lot. He showed up late, and she sat down next to me. The rest was history. So she brought me home to the family, and but we opened up in '86.
Why Knoxville coming from Queens?
Great question. At that time, if you recall, I had been at the University of Illinois
Right.
for 3 years. I had 1 year of high school in Chicago. So we'd moved all over. Remember the threes?
Yeah.
Elementary school, middle school, and then 2 high schools. So I was literally like the man without a home base. So when I graduated from Illinois, and I had a 4.88 on a 5.0 scale, Phi Beta Kappa, Magna Cum Laude, all those other honors. They told me at UT's law school, they sat down with me, they said, we don't think you're going to make much of a lawyer. That's what they told me. And I said, well, gee whiz, why? Give me a chance. The University of Tennessee College of Law at Knoxville called me late and said, would you like to come visit? And I came down, and they said, we really want you to come here. So I said, goodness gracious. It was a good ABA-approved law school. At that time, it's still a very good law school. So that's where I went.
What did you know about Tennessee at that time?
Great story. I love Little Debbie cakes, okay? Love them all, okay? But I used to, in college, kind of live on them a little bit. It was poor, so I got me a box of Little Debbie's Swiss cake rolls. And this is about 1982.
59 cents a box.
Yeah,
Something like that. Yeah.
And loved every bit of it. And it said on there, this is how God's got a great plan. It said on there, official snack cake of the 1982 World's Fair
right.
in Knoxville, Tennessee. And I looked at that box and I said, good gosh, why would they put a World's Fair in a place called Knoxville, Tennessee that I'd never heard of? Who in their right mind would ever go there? Okay? Within less than a year, I was in Knoxville, Tennessee, happiest man
That
in
was your
America.
sign.
And it was my sign. So you're right. I prayed a lot. I said, God, send me where you want me to go.
Do you
And that's
believe
where
God
I-
really works that close in our lives?
Totally. I've seen it.
It's happened too much with me to not believe it.
It is. God hears our prayers, and God's got a plan for everybody. Gives everybody a gift, and I'm just really thankful. I'm going to be 60, as I say, in about 2 weeks. Yeah, I've been truly, truly blessed, overwhelmingly. Yep.
Well, now, when you got here to Tennessee, Hickson, did you think, what in the world have I done here? I've landed here? Or was it wherever she was you're going, you were going?
I was lucky because I had 3 years in Knoxville. And I still love Knoxville. I'm very partial to Chattanooga, always will be very partial to Hamilton County because that's where I had my success as a lawyer and then, of course, running for office. Very, very thankful. Practiced law there, sat as judge there a lot, special judge. But I had already been thoroughly immersed in all the great traditions in Tennessee, from Tennessee football to Tennessee law.
Since
Yes.
the mid-'80s.
Yes. No state income tax. I mean, my goodness. I always lived in these horrible high tax states, and they kept raising taxes. So they're chasing everybody away.
And let's face it, Tennessee kind of went along with your Italian heritage and being raised by a lot of older people.
Yes, absolutely.
Would you consider yourself what they call an old soul?
I am. I'm very steeped in tradition. Very conservative fiscally, very conservative religiously. And yes, the values I was given by my parents religiously, in terms of how we treated people, in terms of my work ethic. I mean, my mother and father both taught me when you go to work for somebody, you give that person your very best for that day and make sure that you earn that pay that you're getting from that person. And just a great respect for the free enterprise system and business in general. And I carry that today to the floor of Congress. I respect the American entrepreneur. I love the fact that people are building businesses and constructing things and growing things, real growth. So that's something that's near and dear to my heart. So yeah, in that regard, I'm an old soul.
You have really gone through, when you look at your record, you've just beat just about everybody you've been up against.
Yes, sir. It's been tough.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Usually you'll see somebody that's, they won this one, they lost that one, they won that, but you just wham, 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 wham.
We've won every time. Very thankful for that. We've had some very close ones. We've had some landslides. But one of my former opponents has become a very good friend of mine. He ran against me my second term. He said something to me that was very nice and was wonderful because I try to heal up with people. We've not healed up with all of our former opponents, but most of them we have. I think you need to be gracious when you win and gracious when you lose. Mm-hmm. My dad taught me that on a golf course. But be that as it may, I would say this. He turned to me one day and he said, after I beat him, he said, Chuck, I felt a calling from God to run against you and run for Congress. But he said, after seeing you, there's a calling from God that you be the congressman. He was convinced of that.
What a good statement.
Yes. That was Scotty Mayfield. I'll give him credit.
Is that
for
Scotty
that.
Mayfield?
A wonderful man.
Wore the bow tie.
Wore the bow tie, just a great, great person.
And you take a guy like him, I mean, it's not like he wasn't well known.
Yep. My first polls to him, candidly, when we ran, we had just had, remember, I won in 2010, we redistricted. I lost 2/3 of Bradley County in redistricting. We've got it all back now. But think about that. We ran polls, and our own poll, okay, in our counties, I was down 55 points to him. 55 points to him. Everybody loved him. And
At the beginning.
Yes. And I was the incumbent congressman.
I remember going to the restaurants in Cleveland and they were working him. I mean, they were wanting him to win.
Sure. Absolutely.
It was a big deal.
It was. And we were very fortunate. I was an underdog, clearly, in my first 2 races, and maybe arguably in the 3rd race as well. But since then, we've done very well. We've built a great coalition, not only in the 3rd District of Tennessee, but really across the state. I've helped people throughout the pandemic with COVID, banks that were having problems getting their resources to their customers. And once we figured it out, we had banks from all over the state calling us. We just helped people. Just the right thing to do.
Do you think that that your knowledge of history helps you to win, or do you think it's your work ethics?
All the above.
Or I believe that I don't know. I think maybe it's you've got a charisma about you that's
Well, thank you.
That's you know, it's like ask me a question sort of thing.
Sure.
And that's what a public servant should be, not standoffish.
Well, thank you. Somebody told me that. I think you've read that right the other day. They said they had dealt with a lot of people in public office their whole life. They said I was the most approachable politician they'd ever met. And I think that's good. And one of the things I really like is when I meet a young person who is learning about our government. They may be in high school, they may be in college, and they've never really met an elected official before. And it's first impressions. If I'm accessible, if I can answer their questions, if I can spend a little time speaking with them, then they're going to go away with a greater appreciation for our great republic.
And I almost think that supersedes your positions on stuff.
Yes.
I really do.
For most people.
I've got subcontractors in the construction business.
Yes.
They can do it. They can do a not so good job, but if they're nice to the customer, they can get away with it.
Yep.
I can have a guy that's really good, kind of a smart aleck to the customer. Nothing he does, it works. That's just human nature.
I think you're right.
When you were mopping back in those days, did you have to move for the customer?
Well, I had to get there before the customers. We used to open up like 6 in the morning, and first thing you had to do was sweep out everything.
Yeah.
So
You got to sweep first.
That was sweep first. So you get all the dirt, but you'd get a few nickels and dimes
Yeah.
and quarters under the
Yeah.
chairs too.
Yeah.
So that was good. So when you're making $2.10 an hour, you're glad to get that change.
Before school?
This was on the weekends and then after school at night. Sometimes you'd close down. That was even harder.
Do you remember all the friends going out on Friday or Saturday night, but you thought, I got to be over there at 6 a.m.?
Tell you the truth, because we moved around so much, I didn't have the group of friends. I was always sadly left alone and alone. I spent a lot of time alone because when you move from school to school and you're taking out of that, and thank God that's why I was able to have my sons grow up in the same community. I have friends of theirs come up and say, "Oh, I remember I went to kindergarten with Chucky, or I went to middle school with Jamie, or Silverdale Baptist with Jeffrey." It's just wonderful. I didn't have that. So I really didn't miss that because I didn't even go to my high school prom. I didn't know anybody. I'd just been there a year.
You didn't have those long relationships where they got to know you and you know them, and that's a big deal.
Best relationships ever, UT College of Law. Because finally, I was there for 3 years. Everyone was going to be there for 3 years. Yes, I met my wife there, but I met my best friends in the world there. And we're still very, very close. Thank God all but one are still living. And really, we were a close group. Because when you go through that law school experience, it's brutal. It really is. If you've ever watched the movie The Paper Chase, it's an old John Houseman movie. It's wonderful. It's very close to really what that first year of law school is. But I bonded with these wonderful folks. They took care of me because all of them were from Tennessee. We probably maybe had, at that point in time, in a class of about 200, maybe 10 from out of state. And if they were from out of state, they were from Georgia or Alabama.
Yeah, close enough.
Exactly. So,
do you live on campus?
I did. I lived in married student housing out on Sutherland Avenue.
Were you married then?
I wasn't. They let graduate students live in there, and the trains would go by. Literally, these were old, I think, World War II concrete structures, and the trains would come by and shake, and the cinder blocks would rub, and it would come down on you. And so you'd wake up in the morning, and you'd have all that stuff all over you. Yeah. Interesting times. Plus, the train would wake you up about 3 times a night.
Well, Tennessee is really, if they all knew how good it was to live here, we would have a problem.
People are finding out. They're coming in from all over the United States. I hope they have Tennessee values. Some are glad to get away from the high tax, high regulation states of the far west and the Midwest and the Northeast. But sadly, I've had some new constituents come up to me and say, well, look, you're a very nice man, but I don't particularly care for your conservative voting record. And what they're doing, they're leaving their states like Illinois that will never get fiscally sound, or like California that will never get fiscally sound, and they're coming to our state, but they're wanting services that fortunately Tennessee taxpayers have said, look, no, we're going to keep our low tax base and not have to have an overwhelming amount of government services. But they're coming.
It's like saying Walmart doesn't sell caskets.
Yeah.
We don't do that
That's
here.
right. That's right.
I mean, there's got to be trade-offs. I
There
mean,
are trade-offs.
even like in Illinois or Chicago, that's where they have all those concerts that are free and the fountains that are free,
Yeah.
but they're not free.
They're not free. Comes out of that tax base. And you spoke about local government. One of the things I'm so strong about is keeping local property taxes low. It bothers me when a county or a city raises property taxes on people, because if you own a piece of property, you're probably either paying on a mortgage or if you've got it paid off. But if they raise the property taxes, and I saw this in the Northeast and the Midwest, people couldn't, they always had a great cause, right, to raise local taxes. But what happens then? People can't afford the taxes on their homes. We had homes that were little itty bitty homes. This is 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Taxes of $20,000, $25,000 a year. I just talked to a friend of mine in Nashville the other day. I said, what do you pay on property taxes? He said, what do you pay on your house in Ottawa? And it's a pretty nice house. I said, gee whiz, I think it's about $2,400 a year, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. He said, try $25,000 a year on mine. It's terrible. He says it's getting crazy. So that's why when local government, I still think our most important government is local government, then state government, and then us at the federal level, because the closer to the people the government is, the more responsive it needs to be, and the more it can do to really affect the lives of the people.
And it knows more about the nuances of that specific area.
Yes.
Let me tell you about Capstar Bank. They're located in Nashville, Hendersonville, Gallatin, Athens, Madisonville, Sweetwater, Etowah, and in Cleveland at 950 25th Street and 3855 North Ocoee Street. I've used them. I like them. Give them a try. They're no problem. Hello, I'm Dee Burris, and most of you know me as a general contractor. In October of 2020, I started a podcast that I call The Discussion with Dee Burris. Each week, I have conversations with interesting, informative, and fascinating people from Cleveland and Bradley County and the surrounding areas. You can watch the discussion at dburris.com on YouTube and Facebook, where we would ask you to please subscribe, it's free, for updates and notifications of new shows. It's no problem. Have you ever known any places that had property taxes that reversed it?
Yes. There have been referendums, and first of all, we've got some places in this country that are smart. They put freezes on residential property taxes, or something that I think is even more fair, because if you elect a body and they raise taxes, I think that's outrageous. Think about it this way. Make it a plebiscite, a vote of the people. Say, look, before you can raise property taxes, you've got to go to the people and then let them vote on it. I think that's so important, because they should have a say on something that's so direct. But There have been jurisdictions that have taken a look at their tax base and had to go the other way. Why? Because they were losing people, they were losing businesses, and they elected people who at least had the ability or the foresight of saying, look, unless we do something to curb this appetite for taxes, we're going to lose our total tax base. At some point in time, it falls off. But most of the time, once they raise them, you never get it back, and they want to raise and raise and raise again.
And it moves towards more of a little bit more of a socialism. I don't want to say socialism because, you know, we drove in on a county road or
Yep.
city road. I mean, that's socialism.
Well,
You know,
it's paid for though by use taxes typically,
Right.
and that's if there's going to be taxation, I believe in consumption tax. If I buy a gallon of gas, I'll pay tax. If I
I'm
buy a
100
drink, I'll do that.
I'm 100% with you.
Yep.
And if I can't afford it, I won't
Yeah,
buy it.
that's right, and that's why Tennessee's such a great state. Why? Because if you or I go to buy a loaf of bread or
A
a jug of milk,
lawnmower,
yeah,
whatever.
we pay that sales tax. Everybody does.
If you don't want to pay the sales
right.
tax, don't buy the
That's right,
lawnmower.
right. But no state income tax by constitutional amendment. That is the best thing in the world. Only 9 states out of the 50 have no state income tax. And guess what? The governor of Mississippi recently said he knew he's got to try to get rid of his state's income tax because they can't compete with other states. that
How
don't.
would they ever be able to get rid of it once they open that can of worms?
You basically say, look, we're living beyond our means, and what you can do is look at sales tax revenue. Tennessee, sales tax revenue is booming. Good times and bad. You're always going to have to buy necessities, or sometimes when you buy luxuries, you pay that tax on it. Our coffers are full. We balance our budgets. It works very well, and we leave people's income alone. We let people go out and work hard. I wish the federal government did that.
Where do you 9 people meet from Tennessee?
Sir?
Where do your 9?
Oh.
Do y'all meet as a state or do you?
On occasion, we have a delegation meeting, but all of us are on different committees. For example, I was blessed early to be put on the Appropriations Committee. I'm the only appropriator in the great state of Tennessee in the House. In fact, next time, when Republicans take over the House, I will be what we affectionately call a cardinal, which is a subcommittee chairman on appropriations. So, but we have the Ways and Means Committee. That's Mr. Kustoff from Memphis. We don't have anyone on Energy and Commerce. I'm hoping Ms. Harshberger gets on that next time. What else is? Oh, Financial Services is the 4th A committee in the House, and that's John Rose from Cokeville. But there's not a bad committee, but usually you sit more by committees. But just this week, we had a meeting with Senator Haggerty and Senator Blackburn and the House members. We got together in their office, just talked about what's going on in our great state.
Dan Howe told me that you'd been put on a committee that was extremely powerful.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
And is that what he's talking about, the
He's
appropriation?
talking about the Appropriations Committee. It's a very unique committee in Congress. The Appropriations Committee is the committee in Congress that handles all of the discretionary spending for the entire federal government.
The leftover money, as we say.
Sadly today, yes. In 1980, when my friend Hal Rogers, who's still the Dean of the House now, went to Congress, 75% of spending was discretionary, 25% was mandatory. Hold that thought. It's switched around now. So 75%, 70 to 75% is mandatory, 25% is discretionary. What is mandatory spending? Mandatory spending is Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, 85% of Obamacare, interest on the national debt, and some other things. What does that mean? That means it automatically reoccurs. We don't appropriate it for it. It happens automatically. Therefore, it eats up most of the budget. What's on the discretionary side? You'd be surprised. Defense, education, Department of Energy. But when I tell people that defense is on the discretionary side of the budget, they're surprised.
Yeah.
It's not mandatory. But appropriations does that. So Dan is right. That is probably the committee of committees in Congress. It's special. It's tough to get on, and it's tough to move up. As a matter of fact, we have a steering committee that every other committee in Congress, A, B, or C committee, the chairman gets to pick its members. So if I wanted you on my committee, I would do that, it'd be fine.
It has to be members of Congress, obviously, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
But being on the Appropriations Committee, it's not just the chairman's choice. The entire steering committee has got to approve an appropriator. And they do with me.
That's a great thing.
Knock on wood, and I love it. Yeah.
When you're sitting there in Washington, do you ever think to yourself, boy, I'm so proud of myself?
No, I say I'm so thankful to be here. If you look at where I came from, only person in my family to get to go to college, was told can't do, won't do, but won't do, every which way, okay? You won't be a good baseball player. I became a great baseball player. You can't do this, you can't do that, you can't go to law school. When I ran for office, many people were just stunned. They said, well, you can't win, why are you even running? I mean, I heard that time and time and time again. So I sit back sometimes when I'm on the House floor and during a vote or a vote series, which sometimes can be 3 or 4 hours, can be very lengthy. And I just sit back and I say, gosh, how did I ever get here? So
Do you feel a weight of responsibility?
yes, every day, 24 hours
To me,
a
that
day.
would overshadow the proudness of it. Like,
You're so
man,
right.
what am I going? What should I do here?
You're so right.
Because every decision, you could argue both sides, couldn't you? On
You
a lot of
could,
things.
You could, but I'm going to show you. I carry it with me all the time. This is my official voting card. Okay, it is also my official ID. So if ever I get stopped,
Yeah.
they said, "You remember, Congress, you're wearing one of them buttons."
Yeah.
Well, these are a dime a dozen. Okay,
Yeah.
they're nice to have,
Yeah.
but this is the thing that kind of certifies me, and it's my voting
Yeah.
card too.
And there's only 435 of them.
435. They don't all vote. I've got one of the highest percentages of voting in Congress. You talked about that weight of responsibility.
Yeah.
Sometimes people say, well, Chuck, why don't you just come home and miss those votes? And I'll say, I'll tell you why. If I don't cast that vote, 706 to 710,000 East Tennesseans didn't have a say in that.
Yeah, we want you there.
Exactly.
It's almost like that. A Few Good Men. Remember that scene when he said, "You need me on that wall. You want me on that wall."
There you go. And I mean, that's my job. If you don't show up and do your job, you shouldn't be there. That's my view.
I wouldn't vote for a guy that wouldn't try to get up there and vote.
Yeah.
I don't care what it's about.
There are some members that haven't been up there in a couple of years, sadly.
Do you think that people are? Well, I was on the planning commission for
Oh, wonderful.
for years, like
Thank you.
23 years or something. And I always got a little bit confused about. Some people will vote for what they think's good for the people, and then at other times you feel like you need to vote. You need to be the voice of the people, and a lot of times it's two different things. What you think might be best might be different than what everybody wants. So it becomes a conflict, and you just have to weigh those out every instance.
Sure. Well, I come to the House with this worldview, with this ethos. First of all, you've got to look to God, in my view. My Christian faith is very important. And people say, does that affect the way you vote? Of course it does.
Sure.
That's my worldview, and I'm not going to be disingenuous about that. That's very important. Then my view of American government. It's a conservative view on the fiscal side of things, wanting to keep taxes and regulations low, and watch what we spend on, especially as we talk about on the discretionary side of the budget. And then I'm a social conservative, so I'm pro-life, I'm pro-gun, and I have voted that way. Now, fortunately, the vast majority of the people who elect me feel that way, okay?
Right.
Now, if we were in the 3rd District of Massachusetts, I have to be honest, be completely flipped around, that the vast majority of the people in that district would not agree with the way I vote, but the person who they elected thinks that way. It's unfortunate, in my view, but they elect people. We elect representatives who should reflect the will of their constituents, always looking to do something good, but not every decision is political. Many times I have to make decisions that are very competitive to try to get something in for the state of Tennessee. The Oak Ridge Reservation, that's $7.3 billion of federal investment. That's where the Manhattan Project was. But we have a national lab there. We have a big cleanup mission there. We have a big NNSA facility there. What does that mean? Huge jobs and about a $50 billion impact for the state of Tennessee. So in that regard, I put away my Republican hat and I'm competing against Idaho, against Los Alamos, against Hanford, Washington. Very important sites around the country. What do I want to do? I want to win for Tennessee. Kind of like our Vols.
You know, back to jobs in high school, this relates to it, believe it or not, but I was working at Cook's Food Store, and I was
I love Cooks.
yeah, I was a Cook's
Over
Food
here in Cleveland.
Yeah, back when it was
Okay.
bagged groceries, and I'd gotten to the job of the assistant to the assistant produce manager.
Okay.
And I was just in high school, but I remember going to him one day. His name was Clyde Haney, and he worked there for years. And I told him what all I was going to do on Saturday when he was gone. And he said, "Dee, it's your discretion. We hired you to use it." And that
Wow.
always stuck with me.
Sure.
They hired me and my discretion,
Yep.
and they wanted me to use that. Whether or not it was
Right.
always correct, they hired me to use my discretion. So don't you have to think about that sometimes? I've got to just
Yes.
use my discretion.
You do. You do. I have cast, last time I looked, over 7,100 votes. So well over
Golly.
7,000 votes since I've been in Congress. And that's important. Every time I take that card and I stick it in the machine and I push yes or no, I've got to think about that because I'm going to have to live with that.
And somebody may pick it up 3 years from now and say, he voted this way. And
Yes. Or they distort it,
Yeah,
which is really
distort
hurts
it
me.
completely.
Yeah, and I don't mind if I cast a vote, and that's what the bill says. And like, what I do mind is if we cast a vote, and it's one way and the like, and then somebody totally distorts that for political use.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's not only some Democrats, some Republicans. will do
Sure,
it.
sure.
They'll take that vote, and they'll. There was a vote recently, earlier this year, and it came out that both sides were going to support it. It came out of committee 100%. Every Republican voted for it. We voted for it, and then all of a sudden, the next day there was a story out, and it's like, how did that say that? The bill didn't even say that, but it was on national TV saying that. So I really believe in the truth. You've got to tell your constituents the truth. And this is probably a statistic I'm most proud of. Progressives will not vote for me, okay, because I'm a conservative, and I respect that. They disagree with my view of government, they disagree with my voting record, and the like. But we did a poll a while back. Now, when I have an election, usually I get about 67-68% of the vote in the general election. That's pretty good.
it's a lot.
So it's very thankful. My Democratic opponent, usually the low's been 28, but typically is going to get about 32-33%, a third. So we look at that. But we polled this, and it was amazing. And the pollster, after they did it, said this can't be right. 84% of my constituents, Republican, Democratic, or Independent, said that I was honest. And they didn't have a client anywhere near that. So they didn't believe the polling data. They said I'd be wrong. They went back and repolled it and came back at 84% again. So I will have some progressives call me, upset with my voting record. Chuck, why do you like Donald Trump so much? Chuck, why did you vote this way? And the like. But at the end of the day, with our constituent service, where we help a lot of people, and the fact that I'm there working hard every day, these people sometimes say, look, I like you, I'll just never vote for you. But there's a level of respect at some level.
And it's worth something to not have those people bashing you,
Yes.
isn't it?
Yes. And some people will bash it.
Yeah.
Usually people out of state. They'll get on your official website and you'll see they'll be from California or some part way up north and just Massachusetts and just hitting you. They're not even your constituent.
No.
But let's face it, it's the First Amendment. God bless them for it. Let them criticize me all day. That's why we have our Bill of Rights.
And First Amendment being the freedom of speech. Right?
Amen. That's right. And the right to assemble. And yes, free speech.
Boy, that used to not be controversial, didn't it?
No,
In that
you're
sense.
right.
Now, you're a big proponent of nuclear energy.
Yes.
Do you think that, now they use what, uranium for nuclear?
Most of the time, uranium, there are different ways to enrich uranium. There are different fuels that can be used. The newer generation of fuels are what we call triso fuels. Some reactors that are being used now are using heavy water. So there are different fuels for different types of reactors. Truth be known, some countries in the world, China and India, are using thorium. So there are some use different blends of plutonium. So it would be a different fuel, but most of them are some form of enriched uranium.
What do they do with the waste?
It's an excellent question. Depends on the country. The United States, under President Carter, I think, made a major faux pas, a major mistake. What they did, they decided not to reprocess or recycle nuclear fuel. The French decided to do that. So the French take that waste, reprocess a fuel rod, and get 95% of that back.
More of it.
Yes.
So they're only have like maybe 5%.
So they reprocess. The Russians have reprocessed. The Japanese used to reprocess. What we do, sadly, in the United States, and we're going to have to deal with this now, and I'm actually a leader in this in Congress through the Nuclear Cleanup Caucus and now the Spent Nuclear Fuel Caucus. So I do everything nuclear in Congress, advanced nuclear and things like that, new reactors, largely because of the Oak Ridge connection. We're leading the world.
And
in
maybe
Oak Ridge.
Sequoia, the Sequoia plant?
Well, that is an older nuclear plant doing a great job. We have the only bigger ones that are being built now are like Vogtle in Georgia, but you've also got these older nuclear plants that have outlived their life cycle, which is great. They could go another 20 years. California wants to shut theirs down, which is crazy. They need power. Their governor wants to shut it down. The other day, they came out finally and said, you know what, maybe we need to keep it open another 5 months. The reality is they need to keep it open indefinitely. But going back to the fuel cycle, in America, we store that typically on site at the reactor. Now, some of these reactors, New York State, in my view, made a mistake. They shut down a perfectly good reactor. They've got the spent fuel rods there. So ultimately, we're either going to have to reprocess those or find a safe storage. Yucca Mountain was going to be the be-all and save-all. They fought hard decades to build it in Nevada, and then the Nevada politicians decided they didn't want it on both sides of the aisle. So President Obama fought against it, President Trump fought against it, and President Biden fought against it. So Yucca's not going to happen. So we have to come up with some way to deal with that. So that may be a friendly geologic place where we can go down, perhaps in old salt mines, something that is stable, that is safe.
Seems like it'd be easier to figure out how to use it.
Yes, or reprocess it.
Or reprocess it to the nth degree or
Yes,
something.
absolutely.
We've got to get to nuclear. And, everybody's
Yes.
taking a change now.
Yes.
It used to be against it, but everything's just in the last
Yes.
year, it's just turned 180, and now even the environmental friendly people are saying it's okay now.
It's fascinating you say that. We have some progressives. Nancy Pelosi will never get there on nuclear. But right now, I've got just about every Republican who's pro-nuclear, and I've got about half the Democrats. Where the younger Democrats are realizing, even though they're progressives, It's the older Democrats that are scared to death of nuclear. You don't need to be. It's safe, it's effective, and these new designs are ultra safe. They're smaller, modular reactors. This house that we're in, you could build a nuclear reactor on that site and be that small and efficient.
Well, gasoline plant could blow up too, couldn't it? I mean,
It could. It could. The fear with nuclear is always the potential for a release of radioactive waste. For example, in Ukraine right now, the Russians, I got a call actually from the Ukrainian nuclear people. It's called RADI, R-A-D-I-I. They called me on a Zoom and they said, my gosh, the Russians are shelling. This is a few months ago. They don't realize it's not hitting the plant. If you hit our power source, they could have a major problem. Similar, sadly, to what we saw in Chernobyl, which actually is in Ukraine. So are there risks? There's risks associated with everything, but we are so safe in this country with the way that we deal with nuclear today.
now that Gavin Newsom, the guy that's running against him, what's his name?
In California, I don't know.
He's got some really good ideas. I can't think of his name. He's actually running as a Democrat, but he really makes some pretty good. I can't think of his name, but he's pro-nuclear.
Yep. Well, if you're pro-clean energy, there is no way that we get there without nuclear. Nuclear is the cleanest, safest form of energy. It's carbon-free and the like. I'm for all of the above. I support our fossil fuels. I think we need natural gas. I think we need oil. But we clearly need nuclear. I'm not against solar. I'm not against wind. But at some point in time, it's got to stand on its own.
Mm-hmm. And it's not there yet.
Correct.
Boy, there's a lot of complicated questions in there.
Yep.
You read up on this stuff of even?
Constantly. I read up. I get briefed. I chose, I'm in the minority. Meaning my party, the Republicans, are in the minority in the House. I'm supposed to get 2 subcommittees. I took 3. And the reason for that is I just enjoy what I do, and the more things I can learn about and touch, the more I can help.
Do you how many seats does the Republicans have versus the Democrats?
We are about 5 or 6 short right now.
Isn't it crazy that we're even having a conversation about who's got how many on each team?
Yes, it's 218 you have to get to, and that it's interesting you say that. You talk about the party system. Right now, we pretty much have a 2-party system in the United States, Republicans and Democrats, and I'm a Republican and proud of it. But it's fascinating. You go back to the founding of our republic. Our founding fathers knew that there would be political parties, okay, and they played for that. But what did you have? Whigs. All different types of names. In fact, there was one time a Democratic Republican Party. That's what it was called.
Yeah.
So it has changed over time, but in the modern era, it's Republican and
Remember the
Democratic.
Green Party and the
Yes.
Libertarian Party, and
Still there.
they just never got much traction, did
That's
they?
right. They don't in our system, because our system is set up to favor 2 parties. Candidly, you look at the Israelis. Or even our friends, the English or the Germans, they have multiple political parties. In Israel, I do a lot with the Israelis, the Knesset. I've been there. The Holy Land is beautiful and a great faith experience. But in Israel, if you're in a minority party and you get 3% of the vote, okay, in America you get nothing for 3% of the vote.
Nothing. You don't even get airtime.
That's exactly right. In Israel, you get 3% of the seats in the Knesset. So it's a very interesting form of democracy there. So that leads to multiple parties. There's tens of parties in Israel.
Do you know of anything that you agree with the Democrat Party on that you don't on the Republicans, or is it?
Sadly, and I had this conversation with Jimmy Carter on a flight probably about 4 or 5 years ago. He saw my pen, and he and Miss Lillian were getting on the plane, and we just had a good talk. And he started out. He said, "Congressman, do you realize there was a time when Republicans and Democrats actually liked each other?" He said, "I had Republican friends, and the like." And I listened to him, And I said, well, Mr. President, there was a time when the Democratic Party would disagree with Republicans, but at least, like with John Kennedy, and I pointed to him, he was an American hero, he was an American patriot, he loved this country, but he believed in low taxes. He believed in less regulation, okay? Hubert Humphrey, who lost to Richard Nixon, believed in family values. Listen to his tape. What has happened to your party? It's impossible for me to believe in a party that would work against fundamental values in the free enterprise system and just continually open and porous borders where they allow 2 million people a year to pour in unchecked, and every time you come up with something, it's almost that they've just moved so far away, so it's very hard. Where might we agree? To be candid, that we want to see a clean environment. I was just in New York Harbor with our great United States Coast Guard. They wanted me to go up there. I fund the Coast Guard through Homeland Security appropriations. Wonderful people, great branch. And they took me in New York Harbor. New York Harbor, when I was a kid, was a sewer. It was filthy. There was trash floating around. As you know, the Hudson River and the East River go in. The Statue of Liberty sitting here. I sat in New York Harbor on a Coast Guard boat that they let me ride and looked out. There are people fishing in New York Harbor. The water was clear and clean. There's whales, there's sharks. It's clean again. So I think there are ways that we can all celebrate as Americans that we want clean water, we want clean air.
Sure, everybody wants that.
So in terms of a view, I think we can all come together.
We actually agree on that, don't we?
Yes.
The Republicans versus Democrats.
Yes.
Boy, it's complicated.
Very
Everything.
complicated.
If you want residential or commercial plumbing, give Rick's Plumbing a call, Coach Jason or Josh. They'll do you a good job. I've used them for years. They're no problem.
How do we keep the enthusiasm about the future together?
It's a good question. It's a dangerous world. We continue to see very aberrant leaders in the world do things that concern me. Vladimir Putin, I'll be specific. I was in Kyiv 2017, met with President Poroshenko, went to Georgia, met with their legislature. The Russians had taken over 20% of their country, and the world said, so what? And still left them there. How do you stay optimistic? I try to continue to be optimistic because the alternative is unacceptable. If we approach it or govern from a position of pessimism or skepticism or cynicism, then I don't think we should be in public office, and I don't think we should lead. I think we've always got to look forward to something better. What is better? The grasp of technology of the young people. I get around these 20-plus-year-olds, sometimes younger, and they show me how they use their gadgets and technology. It's incredible. They can use any gadget, but if I start talking to them about the Constitution, I didn't know that was in that. Did you ever read it? No. Went into a school a couple months ago, 200 seniors. How many of you read the Constitution? 4 hands went up. So,
And two were lying.
yeah, maybe. But, so I think from my standpoint, offering a message of hope. One of my earlier supporters, great fella over in Franklin, Tennessee, sat down and wrote me a check in my first campaign. I said, what do you want? And he says, I'll tell you what I want. Whenever you give a speech to a group, I don't care if it's a group of PhDs or students or something, and you're talking about things that need to be corrected, always give some examples of things that are going right, so you leave them with some hope and some optimism. And that resounded with me, and I've always tried to do that.
That's sort of a Dale Carnegie technique, isn't
Yeah,
it? To be
gosh,
positive.
I remember Dale Carnegie.
Yeah. Did
How
you
to
have
win
that?
friends? No, but how to win friends and influence people.
Never
right?
criticize, condemn, or complain.
There you go. Gosh, that's a throwback, a good one.
When you ever get stopped for speeding, they give you a ticket.
Nope. I don't ask that anything. Hasn't happened often, but a few years ago, great story. I love Christmas. Oh, I love Christmas. I love where it comes. Love Easter too. But I put up a real tree, because we didn't have a real tree when I was growing up, and had the 3 boys and get everybody together. And I was throwing out the old Christmas tree. So I'm down a little bit because, it's dry, it's old, and it's probably by then January 7th.
And from your heritage, you're throwing something away and you don't even like that.
I'm taking it to the recycling center.
Oh.
And I'm driving down there and driving along the road, and I drive old beat up cars now, but which is great. And all of a sudden I see lights, and a sheriff's deputy stopped me, and I hadn't shaved that day, so it was and it was looking rough, and it was kind of funny because I had the tree in the back, so on the thing, and he comes to the window, and he said, "Excuse me, sir," and I, "Yes, sir." And he looked at me, and he jumped back, and he says, "Oh my gosh, I am so sorry to." And I said, "No, sir.
Why apologize?
Why apologize to me?" I said, "What's going on?" He said, I was over here shooting radar," and he said, "I thought you were going a little bit too fast." And I said, "Look," I said, "Officer, I'm so sorry. I'm taking my old Christmas tree back, and I apologize." He said, please, sir, you have the best day." And I thanked him for being a great servant. And he went on, and like, so I didn't ask for a break. He decided to give it, but I don't get stopped that often because I drive slow. I drive kind of like old man.
That's part of being an old soul.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I was in where 10 Mile, Tennessee is?
I do very well.
Well, I was at the convenience store there, and it's been back when Zach Wamp was congressman.
Yep.
And the guy I was with told him that I was Zach Wamp.
Oh my goodness gracious!
And I didn't correct them. And every time I went in there, they thought I was Zach Wamp.
Wow.
And I never told them any different.
Wow, how about that? Well, when
You
I
know
was
Zach well?
yeah, he was my predecessor.
Yeah. Or you like living in Chattanooga? Well, you live in Ottawa, right?
I live in Ottawa. That's right, I sure do. Which is an unincorporated area of Hamilton County, which now cannot ever be annexed by the city of Chattanooga, which I love. But what does that mean? One set of local taxes, county taxes. We don't pay a city tax. And I love Hamilton County, every part of it. But if you live on Lookout Mountain, if you live on Signal Mountain, if you live on Walden, if you live in Red Bank, East Ridge, you're going to pay a municipal tax there. Collegedale, you're going to pay a tax there, and a county tax. That's why we've got to be so careful about local taxes.
Places like Ottawa,
Yes.
that and even Cleveland, that are restricted like that, are going to become a really advantageous place to live.
Absolutely. People are pouring in, and rightfully so.
People want surety.
Yes. And it's a great place to live. I've been all over this country, and I visit all over this country. I am always glad when I land in the Chattanooga airport and get in my car and just drive all over my 11 counties in East Tennessee. And I go border to border. So I've got Hamilton County in the south, but I've got Scott County on the Kentucky border. I've got Scott and Campbell and Morgan up there.
That's
Oh, yeah.
like
Yes, I'm north of Knoxville. Yeah, great
it's
people.
like a little narrow strip, right?
Yep. Well, right now it's kind of like an hourglass. Goes like this and then back up. But now with all of Bradley County is 110,000 people. Hamilton's got 350. So Hamilton will be my biggest, followed by Bradley, and then Anderson, which has got about 7,600. But I've got McMinn, Monroe, I've got Roan.
Do you have an opponent this time?
I do. I do, same as last time.
Or you can't go. You can't operate that type of an election like you could local county commissioner where you're knocking on the door.
Amen. Amen.
Is
You are
it,
so
is
right.
it even? Is it? It's. Now remember when Lamar Alexander walked the state of Tennessee?
Yep. Different time, different place. And you have hit on something that a lot of people who run for office never realize. If you're going to run, very, very good thing, for school board or city commission or county commission, and it's a smaller pool, you can knock doors, you can do mail and things like that. But if you're going to reach, now the new district probably will have about 780,000 constituents. Remember, the state grew, but we didn't get any more districts. So I'm going to go from about 706, 710 to about 780. There is absolutely no way that you can reach people just by knocking doors or putting up signs.
Now is that 750,000 voters?
Yes, people.
So how many would vote in that? Of course, you don't know. You don't know if they're
know.
going to
It
vote or
ebbs and
not.
flows. That's right.
You have to assume they're all going to vote, right? I
Well,
guess.
there will be a certain amount of eligible voters, but there's big swings. I've had, in some of my elections, 150,000 people vote, and other times a lot less. So, and sometimes more, sometimes 200,000.
Well, how do you cover it all?
There you go.
Because there's no newspaper to speak of now, right?
Well, that's TV. You can do TV. Radio is very effective. Direct mail, the people tell you, is the most effective form.
I don't understand why they say that's an effective form, because I throw them in the garbage as soon as I get them.
And a lot of people say that, but especially negative mail, and I'm not a big fan of negative, but negative mail, you get a piece that, Congressman Fleischmann's a bad guy. Oh, gee, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So it's effective, and they send a lot, or good mail. But in order to reach a larger universe, it's tough. Now, Tennessee is a very inexpensive media market, at least Knoxville and Chattanooga. Nashville's more expensive, obviously. But you go to Florida, TV is through the roof. But today, people are doing digital advertising for campaigns. The world has changed even from when I was elected in 2010. But to answer your question, you hit it right on the head. You've got to say, what am I running for? And then you've got to get good consultants, honestly, because you have to have good polling, and polling has gotten very accurate. You've got to make sure you've got good mail, good communications, and a good team. And today, a good fundraising team, a good fundraising plan.
Boy, I tell you what, that's almost like trying to figure out an invasion.
And in a way, it's a very competitive thing. Remember, second place is last place.
That's right.
In my
And
game.
you could spend a lot of money to lose.
Yep, I almost did.
Now
First time.
your area person here is Gracie. She's marrying Hunter.
Yes.
She's like
she's on the official side. That's
she's
correct.
like perfect, right?
She is outstanding. But I don't want to take anything away from any of my field reps. I have a very good district director who does an outstanding job. Gracie has, on the official side, all of Bradley and Hamilton. And then I have a lady in my Athens office. Gosh, I love McMinn County. Athens is just a beautiful. We have a little office in the courthouse up there. It's great. It's where Ronald Reagan gave his tax slaver speech. Then I have a lady there who has McMinn, Monroe, and Polk. Up in the north, I have a lady who has Scott, Campbell, and Morgan. And then I have a lady up there who does Anderson and Roan. So they all do that. But Gracie does an outstanding job. She went to Lee University, knows this community so well.
Real friendly.
And that's where it helps. That's a great, because she's from here. And when you're from an area, you know people, you know what people are thinking. So when I'm doing my job, if she were to call me and say, Congressman, you got a vote that's going to, I want to let you know the people of Bradley County are here on this issue. She's going to get it right.
You got to have people like that.
Yes, sir.
You got to have them.
Yep. I was just up in Tellico the other day. Wonderful boar and bear hunters.
Well, I love Tellico.
350.
Where'd you go up there?
I went up to Tellico High School. They asked me to come up. They're surprised I came up. They were having a problem with one of the federal agencies. I said, we can't believe that you came in from Washington to see us. And you know what I did? I looked in that room and I told them the truth. I said, I've sat with President Obama. I've sat with President Trump. I haven't sat with President Biden yet because I don't know who he sits with or what he does, in all due respect. But if he wanted to sit with me, I would. But I sit with his cabinet members and I talk to them one-on-one. I said, I represent each and every one of you. The least I respect, I've got to come in and face you all and address your concerns. That room fell in love with me.
Do you get sort of do you get to see like Chuck Schumer and
Yep.
Mitch McConnell and
All the time.
see? I would almost be a, I don't want to say, what do they call that when you see a celebrity and you're,
I'll tell you what it's like. It's like being in a movie and you're like an actor and you're in the cast. You're not the star of the show, but you're in the movie. And I can turn on turn on the news at night and I look and I say, I know her and I know him and I just spoke with them. Or the Secretary of Homeland Security called me today and we argued about this or that. Secretary of Labor comes in and sees you. And now I've been in 3 administrations now because when I was elected, the Obama administration was there, then the Trump administration, now the Biden administration, but they all have different cabinet officials. But again, getting on appropriations, Senator Alexander came to me when I was a freshman, and he was very kind. He said, I think you're extremely intelligent. He said, I haven't quite really met anybody else in public office in a long time like you. I would like you to be an appropriator like I am. He was an appropriator in Senate. And I said, Senator, why? He said, well, Chuck, how many times do administration officials return your phone calls when you call them? I looked at him, of course I always tell the truth. I said, Senator, never. Okay. You go on appropriations, they will return your phone call that day. He couldn't have been more right. So if I place a call for the Secretary of Labor, Marty Walsh, former mayor of Boston, we disagree on just about everything, but he's a friendly man. But when the nation was going towards a rail strike, I was saying, look, please, Mr. Secretary, work with us. And then I said, I tell you what, let's talk about something that we both agree on, workforce development. We've got to develop our workforce. We've got to get more technical education out there. We've got to get more men and women who have a different skill set than me and you to work on things. Gosh, Chuck, thanks. Yeah, let's do that. My point is, because of that, and being on appropriations and being there with seniority, I get to play at a level. So I guess you move from when you're a freshman, maybe being a B actor to an A- actor. And
that could get larger.
yes, it can. It can, with a few breaks. But when you see these people, you know them, you visit with them, ambassadors, presidents of countries, prime ministers, kings, fascinating conversations.
You didn't get there by accident.
No, I think God had a hand in it all. I believe it fervently. Yep.
I really appreciate you.
I've enjoyed this immensely.